Hello, I'm Kads and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be talking about my fusion plan for the current Void Legendary Fusion Emic Trunkheart. Right out of the gate, there are a couple things to mention that yes, he is a Void Legendary, so we do hold him to a bit of a higher standard as far as his kit goes, which we'll look at in a few seconds. And this is also a hybrid style fusion. And what that means is, as you can see here, there are no rares, even though it's still a fusion, but there are no rares that you fuse into the epics. You have to do all the events and tournaments to get the fragments for the epics, and then you summon the epics and level them up to level 50, ascend them like a normal fusion, and then you fuse those 4 epics into the legendary. So this style is generally considered the hardest type of fusion in the game, because not only do you have to do basically every event and tournament to get all of the fragments to fuse all of the epics, you still then have to, after summoning them, they're still an epic, they're still going to be 4-star unascended, so you have to get them all the way up to level 50, 5-star ascended, and then you can fuse them together into the legendary. So is Emic Trunkheart the right champion for you to invest your time and resources into? First off, he is HP based, and once again he is a Void Legendary, so we will hold him to that and see if he stacks up to other Void Legendaries. Base stats are pretty solid, not gonna lie. For an HP based champion, 23k is pretty good. I'd say it's on the higher end as far as like the averages for base stats for HP based champions, particularly legendaries. Defense is a respectable level, just under 1200. Speed's pretty high, honestly, at 105. And then he gets an extra 20 resistance. All champions have a base of 30 resistance, and so he gets an extra 20 to bring it up to 50. As far as his kit is concerned, on the A1, it will increase the value of shields by 25%, shield on himself as well as the ally with the lowest HP. However, they did make the change on the test server because this was scaling infinitely. So basically, we take whatever shield value and multiply it by 1.25 every single time he used his A1, which would ramp up to basically infinity over time. And so they changed it such that the growth of the shield caps out at 10,000, which is perhaps a bit on the low side, but it's still a respectable change compared to it kind of infinitely scaling to infinity, which is probably not the intention. And growing a shield would not be as useful if he didn't have a shield himself, which he does on the A2. So the shield is a pretty hefty amount, 30% of his max HP. And again, he is HP based, so you can scale that really high. But it also has this amazing bonus ability or bonus aspect where it'll decrease the cooldown of all ally skills except this champion's by 1 turn. So you get a little bit of a Painkeeper on a 3-turn cooldown, which is really solid. And if that's not enough, then on the A3, he places Unkillable on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown when booked, but he also has a 2-turn duration buff and a shield on himself. And again, it is equal to 30% of his max HP. So essentially, between all 3 of his abilities, he will probably permanently be under a shield and making it stronger with every A1. So with the basic abilities alone, he's kind of a combination of a Sir Nick with the 2-turn Unkillable on a 4-turn cooldown and a Painkeeper on the A2 here. So that's a pretty interesting niche of a hybrid champion. In addition, though, he does also have a passive here where when he's attacked under a shield, there's a 50, books up to 75% chance to increase the cooldown of a random skill of the attacker by 2 turns. And this can occur once per attack, so once per like enemy attacking them, not multiple times, or not based on number of hits, for example. And then also when an ally's HP drops below 20%, they just get a damage boost of 20%, which is pretty substantial if you can think about a Leorius, for example, just getting an extra 20% damage while he's also doubling his damage by being low HP. Like I said earlier, since he's gonna essentially always be under some kind of shield, you're always gonna have this ability, this passive ready to go. And the first part of this passive is a lot stronger than you might think, because essentially the way the game works is whenever a champion takes the turn, they use an ability, it goes on cooldown, the maximum cooldown. And so if they have more than one active ability, then when they hit him and they proc this chance, it will actually put their other skill on cooldown by 2 turns because their first ability has already been used and it's on max cooldown, so it can't increase it further. So if you think about a champion like Nishak Vermalord, a previous fusion, who needs to use his abilities back to back, he uses his A3 to place bombs and then A2 to decrease the duration of the bombs. If he were to hit an Emic Trunkheart on the A3 and he procs this ability, procs this passive, it would actually increase the cooldown on the A2, meaning you couldn't then decrease the duration of the bombs and you'd essentially have a dead turn despite getting the extra turn. Another example that you guys might be more familiar with, perhaps on the enemy teams, would be like a Warlord, for example. If a Warlord were to lock him out in this passive proc, then the Warlord would be, at least for 2 turns, would be locked out of his ability where he places the shield and heals and stuff. So it can definitely mess up the cycling of enemy champions if he's on your arena defense, for example. So what do I think of this champion overall? I give him a solid A+, maybe an S-, I do think he's extremely worthy of the title of Void Legendary because, like I said, he is combining a Sir Nick with a Painkeeper, which is a very unique combination of skills, and that's definitely going to help a lot of people out in with their Unkillable teams and Demon Lord Clan Boss. But also he has the capacity to do some cool do some cool things in the Shogun's Grove because he is a taunt champion. And I think with the passive, he can be a pretty solid champion in a bolster set or a shield set for arena defense. However, do bear in mind that that is the only part of his kit at all that would require any level of accuracy. Everything else doesn't really need it. But if you did want to take advantage of the passive, you will have to build him with accuracy in order to reap the benefits of this part of the passive. And lastly, as far as the aura is concerned, as you might suspect, it is HP percentage in all battles by 30%. So now let's switch over to the lovely spreadsheet here where we talk about the fusion plan. This is essentially a tabulated version of the calendar that we get from Plarium every time there is a fusion. So the layout for this is essentially the same as what we'd expect from a fusion. So we have the 4 dungeon splits as far as tournaments are concerned. We have 2 classic arena takedowns. We have a champion training tournament. We have a champion chase tournament. We have 3 dungeon divers. We have 3 artifact enhancements, champion training event, and then a summon rush that is the normal one that starts tomorrow. But we do also have a bonus summon rush, which we'll talk about a bit later. And some of the noteworthy elements that I found in this fusion calendar in particular are that, one, it is fairly condensed. And so what I mean by that is that it stretches only over the course of about 2 weeks, so 15-ish days. So 13-ish days, similar to Newt, which was about 14 days. And we're comparing this to the previous fusions in general, which usually stretch out to more of day 18, a little bit further, day 16, you can see here. So if we scroll down, you can kind of see, generally speaking, it stretches all the way out to 3 weeks. There's a bit more spacing between the events, and particularly more that you feel that most in like dungeon divers and artifact enhancement, because there's just less time to recoup your silver if you're not on top of it over the course of the fusion. Another thing to mention is that we do have a pinch point where you have the overlap of the champion training event and a couple of the dungeon tournaments. So you're gonna have to allocate your energy appropriately to get all of those things done. As we spoke about earlier, there are 2 summon rushes, one of which is the normal one you'd expect over the weekend. I think the champions for that have actually been announced, but it's a bunch of like a bunch of Hydra specific or focus champions. But the main thing to note here is that this is an all-in summon rush, meaning that there probably won't be a split between the 2150 for half the fragments and then a 3500 or something higher. And because it's a void legendary, I'd expect the milestone to be higher. So my money is on a 4300-ish, which is equivalent to about 9 sacreds worth of points. So I would be prepared for that if you are going for this fusion. But as I hinted at earlier, there is also this bonus summon rush that's kind of in the middle of the following week, where there will be an extra 50 fragments up for grabs, and it is a summon rush event, meaning that you don't have to compete with others in a tournament to try and win. They're just there if you pull enough shards. And honestly, this is the first time they've done this, and so there's no precedent for me to look back on to estimate how many shards it might take to get some of the fragments. I don't know if it's going to be a bulk of 50 or if it's going to be 25. It's unknown. This is uncharted territory. So I'm hoping that maybe they'll do some sort of split where one of them is at 2150, the other is at 3500 or something somewhat reasonable. But the problem is that this happens after the all-in summon rush, and so we don't really know if we can skip it yet. We don't know what these champions will be. Presumably there's going to be like a midweek 10x. I guess it overlaps with it doesn't overlap with CVC, but it's a midweek 10x. So it's a midweek summon rush. So there probably will be an associated 10x, and so we don't know the champions for that. That might be better or worse than this weekend. So it's really hard to say if it's going to be worth holding out for that, and especially since it's after the summon rush that you most likely cannot skip. And the last item to mention is that the champion chase tournament here is kind of in the middle, but closer to the end. So we can kind of do the same thing as with Newt, where you can save your epic fragments till the champ chase, and every epic that you fuse during that time will give you 250 points towards the champ chase. However, because this is going to most likely overlap with 2 times ancient, which is the most accessible shard type for a majority of players, you probably don't really need those points. But if you want to be efficient, you could get up to maybe 500 or 750 points during the champion chase. And for that one, I'm estimating that's going to be similar to Newt and Supreme Elhain, so 3200, and that will take, depending on your luck, on average, let's say 70 to 80 ancient shards. And I guess I should mention, for those who are less familiar with this format or the spreadsheet in particular, which will be linked in the description box down below if you guys want to take a look and use it as a guide while you're completing the fusion. But I go in here and I mark everything with an asterisk if it's an estimated value, and once it's live in the game and we know the actual value, then I remove the asterisks asterisk, so you know that it's the exact value. And then I try to also put in parentheses what I actually did for my account and what it actually took me to do it, if you guys want to look back and see what it costed me with my strategies and how I approach fusions overall. A final note here is that this is a hybrid fusion, meaning that the epics will need to be ascended, so you will need to access the force keep. So if you want to know which days are coming up for the force keep, you can kind of look at that here on the calendar. And if we flip over to the fusion potion calculator tab, we can see that we have it tabulated for him specifically. We have 4 force epics, and this is the total number of potions that you will need. So you can screenshot that, or you can just refer to the spreadsheet, which again linked in the description box down below, so you can see, make sure that you have enough of the superior potions in the force and the arcanes. Oh, and one last thing on the main page here, I forgot to mention that I do also catalog my plan for my energy spend, and I do update this throughout the fusion if it changes, but you can kind of see how I plan to budget my energy, and slash here just means I'm doing both simultaneously. Now, normally what I do at this point is I talk about my starting supply count for the fusion, and in this case, we're sitting at a lovely 52 million silver, so I actually abided by my rule of the silver embargo, so I have not been spending a ton over the past couple of weeks after the Newt fusion, because I definitely needed to recover, and we're sitting at 4,050 gems. But what I wanted to start doing was posting the end results, probably in the community tab on my YouTube channel, so I'll summarize where my silver is, where my gems are at the end of the fusion, and we can compare that to the beginning of the fusion, so you guys can kind of see what's the supply depletion over the course of the 2 weeks for this fusion. So let me know in the comment section down below if you guys are a fan of that change that we're going to make as far as additional posts on the community tab, which at the moment I basically reserve for posting the results of all the tournaments that I tell you guys to go for, and so you guys can see what I actually do for the tournaments and if I'm committing hard to trying to win it or if I just go for the rewards on the right. And with that, best of luck to all of you who are definitely going for this fusion. I recommend it from my personal standpoint. I don't think I'm going to get too much mileage out of him because I'm not personally not a fan of unkillable teams for Demon Lord Clan Boss, but I'm kind of intrigued as to what the future holds as far as compositions with him. Ideally, they would be full auto because that's kind of where the game is headed as far as the new update with the Clan Boss auto battles. And if you can get a 1 key on Ultra Nightmare, or I guess any difficulty, if you can get a 1 key, you can auto battle it. So if he comes out, if some of the big brains come out with a full auto 1 key team featuring him, that'd be kind of cool for a majority of players, but I myself won't be partaking because I do not like unkillable teams. So as always, if you found this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below, and if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.